What's happening? My name is Erik J Olson. Unlike you, I am not a software developer. I used to be. I coded for about 15 years, starting off in classic ASP. Yes, that's super old technology, which then turned into .NET. I was a .NET developer for a long time. And then most recently, I switched over to Node and the whole JavaScript world. And that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. But what I enjoyed more was having an agency with predictable revenue. So I started off as a freelancer, and then I transitioned over to a small consultancy owner, an agency owner, and I started hiring people. And what I found was that it was very unpredictable as far as the work that was coming. But one of the areas that I found that was predictable was our very small digital marketing segment. And so we focused in on that. And about 3 years ago, we transitioned to 100% digital marketing. The name of my company is Array Digital. And it was weird for me because I'm not a digital marketer. I'm a software developer. I love developing software, but I had to switch because it was the right thing to do. It is hard to find clients and it is hard to keep clients. So when you finally find a client, you want to make sure that you stick with that client for as long as possible. The story I'm about to tell you is about how we transitioned to where we are now and all of the pitfalls that occurred in that transition. By the way, like you, I'm at home and I'm recording this in a spare bedroom turned office. I have a room down the hall with about 7 birds. They're my wife's birds. She loves them. But they do fire up every once in a while. So I'm just giving you a heads up in case you hear some squawking in the background. That's what's going on. We finally did it. We are all in Las Vegas. I have flown all 472 of our employees to Las Vegas for this one party. This party that we've been talking about for over 10 years because we finally reached $100 million in revenue. This is a goal that we set well over 10 years ago, and we have been working every single day to try to achieve it. I'm in my hotel room with my wife, and we're getting ready to go downstairs. And we're running a little bit late because she can't pick shoes. We get into the elevator finally, go downstairs, the doors open, and we're greeted by employees and some people I don't even know. New employees, and there's all of their guests. We walk into the main room. There's a bar in every corner, and people are dancing on the dance floor in the middle. And this is the big event that I've been thinking of for over 10 years. My friend, Zach Miller, he's the MC. He grabs the microphone and he goes out on the dance floor and he gets everyone's attention. He does a little bit of an intro, tells a few jokes, and then he asks me to come out. As I walk out, I grab the microphone and my ring hits the microphone like that. And I hear it. And it echoes throughout the ballroom. And I start to get a little bit emotional because this is the speech that I've been thinking about giving for over 10 years. We finally made it to $100 million. This vision that I have takes place in 2030. And this is how I define our success. We want to reach $100 million in revenue. And I need to put myself into the future so that I can understand what that means. How many employees we're going to have, what we're going to do to celebrate, where we're going to be in Las Vegas. There's a lot of details that I've put into this idea because this is what we call the painted picture. The painted picture is where you create an image so vivid that you can place yourself at the scene years from now. This one image is something I think about. It's something we talk about on a daily basis on our podcast, Journey to $100 Million. This is where me and my business partner, we talk about all things on our daily podcast that we're learning, that we're trying, lessons learned. And the goal is to get to that painted picture in the year 2030. It's a huge goal. but we've got a long time to try to achieve it. I encourage you to think about what success looks like for you. What does the future hold for you? And get as vivid as possible. For you, it may be money. It may be a big house. It may be a lot of free time. Everybody has their own version of what that painted picture is. But I want you to think about what that is, get as detailed as possible, and start painting your own painted picture. Yes, I had a full-time job as a software developer, but I wasn't super happy doing it. I knew that I wanted more. I knew that I needed to transition out of my daily grind and into my own agency eventually. But before I could get there, I started freelancing. So when I finally decided that I was going to start on this journey, the very first thing I needed was my first client. How do you plan on getting your first client? Well, for me, it was actually really, really simple. I went to elance.com, which has since been acquired and merged into Upwork. And I put a profile up there and I started bidding on a couple of gigs. And within 1 week, I had 2 projects from 2 different clients. It was actually more work than I could handle. I was getting a decent rate. I wasn't getting like the amazing rates that your other freelance buddies probably brag about. But I was in the game. I had clients. I had work to do. And once I delivered the first couple of things for these clients, guess what? They wanted more. This is an example of one of the clients that I helped early on. It's an existing company still. I don't work for them anymore, but I did a lot of work for them over several years. And it started off as really not even a good project. This was legacy ASP, classic ASP, which I hadn't done for years and I didn't want to do it. But that's what she had still, and she had a business problem that could only be solved through code. So guess what? Even though I did not want to do that project from a technical standpoint, it wasn't sexy, not even close. But I wanted to get into the game, and so I did it. I took the gig, and my classic ASP was rusty as hell. But I brushed it off. I Googled. I looked at Stack Overflow nonstop, and guess what? I figured it out. I got back into the game with that project. I said Google. My phone woke up. But listen, I got back into the game, or I got into the game of freelancing from that project. The other client had a similar kind of project. It was not quite as old as the classic ASP. It was like early web forms, .NET, super old. But even at that time, and this was 8 years ago. Is that right? 7 years ago. 7 years ago. But even at the time, like web forms was just ancient. I didn't want to do that crap. Right? I think we had ASP.NET MVP or MVC. And it, I just didn't want to do that kind of work. But I took it anyways, and both of those projects led to new work, and the new work was a total redo. So I had to bring in the then current technology that I preferred to use, which was great. So even though I started off taking on projects that I didn't really want to do because, I was a developer and I didn't want to work on that old crap. I wanted to work on new crap. Well, I was able to talk to those clients and figure out what their problems were. And I realized that they needed new crap to solve their old problems. And so I introduced new technology and a whole new stack for both of them. So here's actually a W-2 screenshot from that last company. I made real money, and this was part-time. I did this for 6 months that year, part-time. And that's the kind of money that I was able to bring in. So there's good money in part-time freelancing, especially as a software developer. Your skills are in such high demand, it's ridiculous. Now, your friends may make fun of you if you go onto Upwork and you create a profile, but who gives a shit? You want to be in the game, right? You want to be freelancing, you want to make some money, you want a client, that's what you do. Now you can also do the other things. You can ask around, right? You can post on the online, of course. But the key here is get your first client as quickly as possible and with as little friction as possible. And these sites like Upwork, they're great for that. Now you will be competing with other developers worldwide. But let's say that you're based in America and you are talking to an American potential client. Are there any benefits of them working with you versus, say, someone in, I don't know, Indonesia? Pick some country, right? Where they work for a tenth of the price. What's the benefit of working with you? Well, there's a lot. Number one, you work the same times that they do, right? If they pick someone around the world, then there's going to be a 24-hour communication lag between questions and answers. It's going to take them forever to get the job done. Number two, well, what are some other benefits? Number two, these people, they probably don't speak their language. It's going to be very hard to communicate. Three, things like idioms. Let me just throw one out. If I were to say, or if a client were to say something ridiculous like, yeah, I think that's great. They might not even know what that means. But imagine if they said something like, that dog will hunt, right? I'm in Virginia. That's a phrase that you hear a lot around here. Well, that means like all good, okay? Well, someone in India is not going to know that. So there's a lot of benefits to working with you instead of the competition, and never mind the fact that you probably are technically advanced, right? So think about, and by the way, those are all just examples of how you could position yourself in a global marketplace like Upwork. So think about how you can bring value to a relationship and then point that out, because a lot of these customers, they don't even think about these things. They're just like, oh, here's developer one with that says they can do it. They don't even know what the skill set is really, probably, right? Here's developer number one that says they can do it for $5 an hour. Here's developer number two, you, that says $50 an hour. Why would I pay $50 an hour? Well, tell them why they should pay you $50 an hour, right? There's a value proposition that you bring. You have to bring a value proposition. Otherwise, why would they hire you? So tell them exactly what they should expect by working with you. Let's say that your freelancing has gone fairly well and you've been doing it for a little while, and for whatever reason you decide now's the time. I'm going to do this full time. You're going to make the transition from being an employee who freelances to a full-time freelancer. Well, the very first thing you need to do is set up shop. And for me, that meant the dining room table. One very similar to the one that I'm showing you right now. Every morning, the kids would go off to school, and I'd grab my backpack, I'd take my laptop out, I already had my cell phone on me, and I would get to work. All I needed was me, my laptop, and my cell phone, and that was it, and I was in business. I had my freelance clients that I had won off of Upwork, previously known as Elance, and I started to get more work. When I went on my own, I had 50% of the income that I was getting from my day job. And I was like, you know what? I'm going for it. I'm going to build this up and get it to 100% or more. And so that was my goal. And I started working my ass off. But I only lasted 1 week at the dining room table. Now, maybe I didn't have a room like this at the time. So it was a dining room table. But the kids would come home at about 2:30 from elementary school. And, that was it. Like, I had to put everything back in my backpack, and that was it for the day. And then when the kids went to bed, maybe I'd work a little bit more. But I only had about 6 hours or so, and I just had to crank out as much as possible. So me, my laptop, and a cell phone. And, that's how I got started. When it was time to get out of this house, which was 1 week after I started working in the house, I found basically a co-working space named Hatch in downtown Norfolk. I live in the Norfolk, Virginia Beach market, and they were an accelerator. And so they had a lot of, like an incubator. They had a lot of companies that were trying to start their own business, startups. And I knew the owner of Hatch, and he offered me a small office at a very, very low fee. I just had to pay, it was like $30 a month for basically toilet paper and paper towels. And the rent was, he got the rent for free from the city. And so it was a sweetheart deal. I saved a ton, I saved a lot of money by not renting an office. But I was also around like-minded people, startup folks, people that needed software. And so I had my clients from online, but then I was also able to start getting clients locally. So I spent a lot of time at Hatch working and networking, and it led to more and different kinds of clients, which was very, very good. But when I really wanted to kick this thing into high gear, I knew that I needed to make an announcement. I needed to tell every single person that I knew that I was in business for myself. If you want to find clients, which is the whole point of this talk, then you need to, at a minimum, tell your entire network that you're in business, that you're open for business, and that you want business either from them or to refer business to you. So what I decided to do was I wanted to send a letter. This is snail mail, which I still do today. I'm a digital marketer, and I still believe that if you get something on your desk, then it's powerful. You're going to look at it. So I sent a piece of snail mail to every single person that I had a physical address for. It was about 230 people. And it was very similar to a wedding announcement. Same kind of like paper, printed, put into a nice envelope and addressed. And I told them that I had started a company and this is what my company does. And if they know anybody, to please refer them to me. I sent it to, like I said, everybody, not just businesses, business acquaintances. I sent it to aunts, uncles, my sister, my parents, anybody that I knew got that letter if I had a physical address for them. It was only 230 people. And it cost me maybe $150 to print it and for the stamps. The stamps were the most expensive part. Out of that, one person, not a huge return on the investment, or at least on the effort, I should say, but I got a job out of that. And that led to another job, and that led to a recommendation, and that led to a referral. So it got me going even further down this path than me finding jobs online or me hanging out at an accelerator where there were startups. This was a third way that I could get clients, by telling my entire network. But before I did that, I realized that I had a problem. And this is a problem that you probably have as well. I had multiple personas that I had gathered over time. This is kind of like multiple personalities or multiple identities. But basically, people knew me in different contexts from different time frames. So up until that point, I had done a lot of different things. I had tried several different businesses. I had tried freelancing way in the past. So I had a company name called Sharp Code. I helped my wife with the bakery that she ran, so people knew me in that context. I was part of a professional organization. People knew me in that context. People knew me as a DoD contractor because that's what I was doing for my employer. People knew me as an employee at that employer. So people knew me in these different like slices of my life over time, these different personas. And if you do any freelancing right now, I think you know exactly what I'm talking about, because there's a persona for you that is the good developer who works steadily at the job for their employer day in and day out. But if you go home and you freelance, there's a totally different persona. And that's you as the freelancer who is trying to get work from clients that have nothing to do with your employer. And you don't want those two worlds to collide. Those two personas are separate. I had that problem and I had it big time. And I knew that I had to consolidate all of those personas down into one. And this is another powerful way that you can get clients. Consolidate all those personas down to one so that every single person that you know knows about you in your new business as an agency owner, freelancer, consultant, whatever you want to call yourself. They know that you are in business for yourself and they know what you're doing. So that means telling everybody what you're doing. It means going to those old personas like old websites or where you're a co-founder of some business that has been around for like 10 years but hasn't made $1, and deleting. You just get rid of all that shit, right? And so if there's an old website that's just lingered forever but your ego won't allow you to get rid of it, Now's the time. If you do not consolidate down all those old personas, then people know you in different contexts. They may even think, oh, this guy, Eric, he does all these things, so he's no good at any of them. You do not want them to have that perception of you. You only want them to know you as the agency owner, the way that you want yourself represented. You have to kill those other personas. Delete old email addresses, delete old websites, go clean up your LinkedIn, go tell everybody you know, not just once on like social media, over and over. And my recording just stopped at the end of that 8-minute rant. But here's the point. You have to consolidate all of those personas down. Get rid of the old ones and make sure that every single person that you've ever run into, basically your whole life, and certainly the people that know you now, know you as the agency owner that you want to be. If you've done all the things that I've talked about so far, you told everybody that you know what you're doing, you're networking, you're getting jobs online, you're going to be getting work, and at some point you are going to find yourself getting burned out. You are going to be slammed because it's going to be you doing everything. You're doing the coding, you're billing, you're taking phone calls, you're doing trouble tickets, you're doing it all. Everything relies on you. When I was at that phase, I didn't leave the house or my office without my laptop. I took it, if I was going to the store, then I took my laptop with me just in case I needed it. And it's fine at first. You do it. You do what you need to do at first to get by and to get to work and to make sure that your clients are happy. But at some point you want to live again. You want a life, you know, and being afraid that some of your code is going to break all the time, you don't want to live like that. At some point it will be time for your first hire. This was very difficult for me. I put out, well, I was very lucky to find someone very quickly. I posted on Craigslist and I posted on a local development Slack team that I was hiring. And someone came to me and we interviewed and I really liked her. And I was ready to make an offer. The salary was right where I needed it to be and she was available. It was perfect. I came home that night and I told my wife, I found someone finally. I'm going to hire someone. This is great. But, honey, I am going to pay this person every 2 weeks, no matter what. The question is, will there be enough money left over for me to pay myself? That was a big, big question for me. And I had to answer that honestly. Like, would I really be able to make enough money to pay me and the employee? But guess what? That employee was going to get paid no matter what. If someone was going to be sacrificed, it was going to be me. I wouldn't get paid. And so you have to be prepared to do something like that if you're going to hire someone. Because when you hire someone, you're responsible for them. Number one, their livelihood is in your hands, right? So you can't screw around with things like not paying them on time. Those are no-goes. If you do not pay someone or pay them on time, that's terrible. Do not do that. Do not get yourself into that situation. You have to pay them and you have to pay them on time. But also, their career is now in your hands. So things like career development opportunities, do you take them to networking events as well? These are all things you have to consider. You have to buy them a computer, right? So there's an investment. And you need to treat your first hire as an investment and not as an expense. This is the actual offer letter to my first employee, Alicia Lauerman. She came on. She was fantastic. She actually knew more than I realized. And what I found when I doubled the size of the company from a one-man show to me and her was, number one, I had a little bit of relief. That's what I was looking for. I could do more, right? So when you think about like economics, supply and demand, when I brought someone else on, there was twice as much supply. But I was worried that I wouldn't be able to find the work to keep us both employed long term. When I hired her, I only had about maybe a 6-month runway. I was in the middle of one big project, and I just landed a second big project that I knew I couldn't get started on for 3 or 4 months if it was just me. And then it would take another 6 months to get that project out. So I needed somebody, I needed her right away. But with the two of us combined, it was about 6 months of work total. So I had to go find other work. But what I found was that when we doubled the supply, we doubled the demand. That was a realization that just still baffles me. And frankly, I'm not even 100% sure I know why that happened, but I started getting more work when I doubled the size of the company. When I had other people that I could rely on, all of a sudden I had more work coming my way. Now, maybe it's because when I would say things in the past like, oh, our company and we do this and we do that, I probably didn't believe it, or they knew that I was a one-man show. But all of a sudden, when there actually was another person back at the shop and I was pitching somebody and I would say those same things like, we do this, we do that. Alicia is my right-hand woman, man. I believed it. It was convincing. And I started winning more work. And we were fully employed to the point where about 6 months later, I needed to hire another person. But that first hire is still the hardest decision that I've ever made. Do not take that lightly at all. This will probably be your hardest decision as well. Oh, by the way, I did hire freelancers before I hired someone full-time, and I found that there was kind of a problem with that. When I hired a freelancer, I kept them at arm's length distance, which meant that I didn't make a commitment to them. I was just like, hey, if I come across work, then I'll give it to you. But if I don't have work, you don't get paid. And I didn't commit to them. And what I found was that they didn't commit to me either. Right? So if they had a day job, that came first. If they had other clients, that may come before me. But I needed at some point a commitment. And so I knew that freelancing was no longer going to be the model that worked for me. If I wanted someone to commit to me, if I wanted another developer to commit to me, I had to commit to them first. And that meant full-time W-2 employment. There's a lot of things that go into employment. I can go on and on about employment and benefits and whatnot. If you have any questions about that, here's my email address, eric@thisisarray.com. By the way, you can also ask me questions on social media. I hang out mostly on Twitter at I am Erik J Olson. I'll have that up on this presentation multiple times. But yeah, feel free to reach out to me at any point and ask me questions. After being in business for a little while, I rebranded my company to 80/20. I wanted a name that was short, I wanted a name that was abstract, and 80/20 is a phrase that's used in business a lot. Like it's called the Pareto principle, also known as the 80/20 rule. And I thought, 80/20 would be perfect. Like that would just be a cool name. So I started to tell people, and I rebranded, I got a whole new website and everything. What I found was that there was another business in my city named 80/20. This one was a burger bar. I didn't even know about it until I started telling people that my company name was 80/20. And it was pretty embarrassing, actually. One time I went into the Apple store to talk to one of the Apple geniuses. And I said, she asked me what company I worked for. I said, 80/20. She goes, oh, I know you guys. I love you. And I said, do you mean the burger bar? She goes, yeah. I'm like, we're the software company. She goes, oh, I've heard of you guys too. And I was like, no, you haven't. I don't think so. No, not many people have. So I had a branding problem, and I knew it. I knew it at the time, but also I knew that the software world was a difficult one for me to scale. Now, there's lots of examples of businesses that have scaled it very, very well. I was providing client services. And so what would happen is I would bump into someone that needed custom software development, and I would take on a project, and I would work that project for 3 to 6 months, and then I would deliver it, and that was basically it. And so every time that I needed to find work, I'd have to go find someone new. I'd get a project, I'd work it, and then it was done. I had to go find someone new. Again, the cycle repeated. And by the way, at this point I had several software developers on staff, and as you probably know, software developers are not cheap. They like to get paid a lot of money, as I'm sure you do. And so it was a very expensive enterprise. I had probably 5 to 6 developers, kind of at my peak where we were about $800,000 a year in revenue, and I stalled. We didn't come down in revenue, but we were not growing anymore. I got up to that point very quick. What I found was that in custom software development, if you are providing a service as a project, you can get started very quickly, very easily. Like I told you, it was me, a laptop, and a phone, and I found my first 2 clients within a week. Super easy to get started, like it's nothing. And it was easy to ramp up, but to a certain point. And I knew I had a problem, and I didn't have a product that I wanted to build like most software companies evolve into. I didn't have a product. So I kept doing services, but I knew that there was a problem, and I knew that I needed to partner up with somebody to solve that problem because I couldn't solve it myself. One of the problems that I had was that a lot of my clients that I was building mobile applications and custom software for, they needed marketing websites. So this is a website like a normal website that has a marketing value where their offering is explained to the point where someone wants to pick up the phone and call them and buy whatever it is that they're selling. We didn't build that stuff because I was a custom software developer. I don't build WordPress crap or whatever, you know? That's the way that I felt. But my clients needed it. And so we tried to do it, but custom software developers are not very good at building marketing websites. So I had to refer that work off to another couple of companies. Well, I landed on this one company, and we started to work together. A lot of our clients had opposite needs, where my custom software client needed a marketing website, and their marketing website client needed custom software. And so we started to work on the same projects over and over and over again. And over the course of about 6 months, we realized that we were onto something. That if we combined forces, we could just crush it. The two of us combined. And so that's exactly what we did. In early 2017, we pivoted, both of our companies pivoted big time, and we merged into one company. This picture right here is actually of us signing the paperwork. Actually, it's afterwards. Our lawyers got us that the whiskey, and we celebrated. But it was a huge, huge moment for us. It was a massive pivot to go from 2 one-man shows where, you know, I was controlling my destiny totally. Now I was going to partner with someone. I was going to have a business marriage, and that's really what it is. But I knew that I had a problem that I had to solve, like I said, and I could not solve that myself. I needed someone else. I also had another issue, which was that even though I had employees, it was me. Of course, they did a lot of the heavy lifting when it came to the coding, but running that business and planning that business and worrying about that business, it was 100% me. And it's hard. It's daunting sometimes to realize that you're pretty much in it by yourself. Now, you've got employees you can give work to, but you know what? When you're the one writing all the checks, and you're the one whose name is on everything, and you're signing leases and all that stuff, and you're worrying about your business strategy going forward, it's you, man. And I wanted someone else that I could bounce ideas off of at that same level. And so I needed a partner. And I partnered up with Kevin, who's my current partner. And I told you about the problem with my branding and 80/20, that stupid burger bar. And I knew that I needed to change my name. Well, he hated his name as well. So when we merged, we decided we were going to rebrand. And that's where the name Array Digital came from. We came together. We were going to build not only custom software that worked awesome, which I could already do, but it was going to look and operate awesome. So think beautiful design, user experience. That I didn't have already in-house. So we merged, and it was almost like this. Like there was no overlap between the two companies. We merged companies on a Monday, and on Tuesday we rented a U-Haul, moved my office to a new office, took the U-Haul to his office, packed it up, and moved him to that same new office. There was a tremendous amount of change immediately after that merger. We had a grand opening, as you can see here. This is the mayor of our little city of Chesapeake, Virginia, with us. But we started to throw events at our new office. It was big enough where we could invite people in. This is a great way to do business development and to get new clients. Invite them into your office. Once you have a legitimate office space, you can have events like this for really quite cheap. This event here, which we totally did it up. We got a big tent in the back of the office and everything. We had food, we had drinks. I think it cost us like $700. And most of that was the tent. So even open bar was not that expensive. People are not getting hammered at a business event. They're having a beer or two. So we would have events, but we also did other things. We had our own Christmas party. We had summer outings. We had fun as a team. All of a sudden, there was a group of people, and that actually attracted a community towards us, which I didn't realize was going to happen. But as the team grew and as we kept doing things in the community, we started to get a small audience. People were interested in what we were doing, and with that audience came clients. The office space was key for that because that kicked everything off, and that merger was also key. I was able to do things now post-merger and post-office that I could never have dreamed of before. It took our marketing to a completely different level, and our business development went along for the ride. And we started to get more and more clients. Just like I said before with my first hire, when I doubled supply and I got a doubling in demand, this was the same kind of situation. The office, having fun and having a staff actually led to an increase in business. Once we had a lot of clients coming in, we had to hire a CPA. And we met with this CPA once to review the previous quarter's finances. And after we were done reviewing what had just happened, at the end of the meeting, the CPA said, "So, Eric and Kevin, what does next quarter look like for you?" And at the time we were like, we have no freaking clue. We could double in size or we could be out of business, because we were at the phase of our growth where we were working on projects and by the hour work, and the work was unpredictable. Now let's back up a little bit. By the hour work is something you're probably very familiar with. Almost everybody like you and like me, when we go off on our own or when we freelance, we bill by the hour because frankly, it's just easy to get started. You don't really know exactly what you're getting yourself into, and the customers that hire you, they don't really understand either. You don't understand what the scope is. You haven't done a lot of research probably. And these customers they're just eager to get started. And so they agree to things like paying $50 an hour or $75 an hour or whatever the rate is, but you're billing by the hour. And everybody does the same thing. We all start by billing by the hour. But there's a lot of pitfalls with that. Number one, you only get paid if you actually work. There's really no scaling opportunities whatsoever because you have to have manpower. And you're in a situation where your butt has to be in that seat in order to make money. If you're not working, you're not making money. And the only thing you can do is hire more people and have more butts in seats, frankly. It's a good way to get started, and it's exactly what I did. You're probably doing it yourself if you're already freelancing, but it's not a great way. There's better ways to make money. And that is where project work comes in. With project work, you take a little bit of time, usually on your own dime, to scope out the project. So you get some vague requirements from the client, and then it's up to you to fully flesh it out, or at least flesh it out to the point where you are confident that you know what you're getting yourself into and where the risks are so that you can give the client a fixed price. These kinds of projects are great compared to by the hour because you can make more money. Now, the reason you're making more money is because you are giving them a fixed price, and the only thing that really matters here is the outcome of the work, the deliverable, not how much time you put into it. And what that means is that you can price based on value, or you can price the project based on the client. You may price the same project for two different clients completely differently because one client is a Fortune 500 and one client is not. Well, guess what? That Fortune 500 client, they can afford to pay more. As a matter of fact, they probably do want to pay more because they want to make sure it's going to get done. They're not looking for cheap, they're looking for good. And when someone's looking for good, you can price it appropriately. So project work is the next evolution that we all take. We start off with by the time billing, and then we go to project work. There's a downside with project work, as I've alluded to already. The problem is that you don't really know what projects are coming at you until they come at you. So you can only look so far ahead into the future, and it's basically whatever projects you've already signed. Any that are like in the sales pipeline, you probably won't get them. The likelihood is that you only get maybe a third of them. So you can really only start forecasting accurately maybe a month out. Beyond that, you're just wildly guessing. You have no clue because you haven't even bumped into the person yet that needs that work on project work. So there's a downside with project work. Like I told you before, me and my partner, we had no clue what the next quarter was going to look like for us. And our CPA at the time said, well, maybe what you could do is you could take a project, and let's say it's a $100,000 project. Instead of billing when you deliver different milestones, maybe you bill just a certain amount every month. And the time that you spend, or the total amount of time for billing, doesn't necessarily have to correlate with deliverables, just roughly. So instead of saying, I'll bill you $20,000 when we hit this milestone, you'll say, I'm going to bill you maybe $10,000 every month for the next 10 months. But I'm going to deliver it not in 10 months, maybe in 6 months, something like that. And now we can start to predict your cash flow. And that was kind of an aha moment for us. We started to experiment with that, and it worked. When we proposed to clients that we were just going to bill a certain amount every month, it turns out they actually like that because now they have predictability. They're not going to get slammed with a huge invoice just because we hit a milestone. They're going to know what to expect, and they can communicate that to their accountants and whatnot. Another aha moment was when I was having lunch with an IT business owner, and he had previously transitioned to 100% recurring revenue. So instead of the break fix model of most IT vendors, he instead would sign a contract with his clients where he would provide a known scope of work, like fixing a computer if it broke, or trouble tickets or whatever, for a fixed amount. And every one of his clients was on that. 100% of his revenue came from recurring revenue. So when we were at lunch, he was like, Erik, it's amazing. Recurring revenue has changed my life. And I thought he was being hyperbolic. But he said, you have got to find a way to transform into recurring revenue, Erik. I'm telling you, it's the key. The only thing that we had that was recurring at the time was like hosting. And so I introduced not only just hosting, but support and hosting. And so for like $200 a month or something like that, you would get a couple hours of our time and you would get hosting. And then I continued to refine it where it was like 4 hours a month for a little bit more. And I continued to refine and continue to refine. At some point I had, several tens of thousands of dollars coming in support and hosting. And I was like, this is really nice. I'm starting to see a pattern here. I can start to project out into the future how this is growing and what this means. I just wish everything else was like that. Well, it turned out things like websites can be priced on a recurring model, especially when you start to evaluate the support long-term more than the actual building of the product. Imagine if you gave away a website for $0, if someone agreed to pay you, say, I don't know, $500 a month for the next 3 years. That would add up to more than a couple $1,000s or $10,000 for the website. There are ways that you can structure your projects to provide long-term support. And if you're pitching to the right clients, that's what they want. Remember when I talked about Fortune 500 clients? They don't want cheap, they want good, and they want support. Sell them support more than you sell them the actual coding hours. And you have to separate those two out of your head. You may put in a ton of time building whatever it is they want built, but then you're not going to do it again. So you have to separate the fact that you normally charge, say, $100 an hour, and you put 100 hours into it. And so you've got to recoup this amount of dollars over time. That doesn't mean anything anymore. The reality is you have to pay your employees or yourself, or a combination of both, a certain amount of money to get that project done. Think about your costs. But then when it comes to collecting it in revenue, think about the long term, the commitment that you're asking them to make. Recurring revenue changed my life. Look at this chart right here. This is going back to the very beginning when we started to track recurring revenue, and you can see a very, very clear upward trend. That upward trend has continued to this day and increased in pace. With this, I can start projecting out into the future. This is something I never had before. I can project out my expenses and my income for a month, for a quarter, for a year, for 15 years. Without this tool, recurring revenue and recurring services, there is no way I would have the audacity to say that we're going to grow to $100 million. Because I had absolutely no way of even looking past a month into the future. Now I can. Now I can see that the revenue can grow, and it's all because of recurring revenue. Just like that IT owner that pleaded with me to find a way to get recurring revenue, I'm pleading with you. Think about how you can tweak your services, tweak your offerings to find recurring revenue. Recurring revenue is the key to the lifestyle that you want and the business that you want. Work on it, tweak it, work on it more. It is that important. There's a lot more to the story, but unfortunately I have run out of time, and your time is valuable. So we are going to have to part ways soon. But if you would like to ask me questions, feel free to email me at eric@thisisarray.com. Or hit me up on Twitter. That's where I hang out the most. At I am Erik J Olson. You can also use that handle across social media. By the way, I am coming out with a book in late December of 2020 named $1 Million Journey. It's this same story about how I decided to start the company and how we're scaling it and how we're going to grow it. But basically how we got to $1 million in revenue. There's a lot more detail in there. It is in editing right now, and I look forward to sharing it with you. So late December, be on the lookout for that. Email me, and I'll remind you when it comes out. Take care.